All right. So, hi. We here at Science from Scientists want to make sure that we're staying connected with our students, making sure that they're still connecting with their STEM learning away from the classroom. So, I am here to help talk about one of my favorite things, sharks, and answer some questions from a young scientist. So, a little bit about myself. My name is Simone. I am one of the instructors in our California office. I'm also a marine biologist, meaning I study things in the ocean. I got to study great white sharks in South Africa, so I love talking about sharks. So I'm really happy to be here with a young scientist. So if you want to share a little bit about yourself before we get started, that would be great.
My name is Henry. I am in fourth grade. I'm in Beverly, Massachusetts.
Great. Well, thank you for joining me from across the country. I'm here in San Francisco, California.
Oh,
Great. Are we ready to dive right in?
yes.
Excellent. So what questions do you have for me about sharks?
Well, actually, one of my questions was, and I'm wondering about this, I'm thinking, are all sharks carnivores? Because,
Great question.
Mhm.
So carnivores, things that eat other animals, meat eaters. Typically we think about sharks as carnivores, and most sharks that we know of are actually carnivores. They tend to be apex or top predators, and they're very, very important in the ecosystem as carnivores. But scientists actually just discovered a species of bonnethead sharks that's an omnivore, something that eats both plants and meat. So it eats meat, so fish, as well as seagrass. So we're learning new things all the time about sharks, which is really fascinating. But the vast majority of sharks are carnivores.
That's cool. I had this other question. Are all, what qualifies as a shark? Like, what's the basis? Like, you know,
Yes, I love that you're thinking like a scientist. Scientists love to think about what makes a shark a shark. Several things that scientists have identified to be particularly sharky. They belong to a group called elasmobranchs, and one of the most notable features is that they don't have bone like we do in our skeletons. Their body is made of cartilage, the same stuff as our nose and our ears. But several other things that qualify something as a shark. They have about 5 to 7 gill slits. A lot of other fish have a gill plate over it. Sharks don't, they just have those slits. They also don't have swim bladders to help regulate their buoyancy, meaning help them float and move up and down in the water column. They use their livers to help them with that, as well as their fins. Their skin is covered with something called dermal denticles. So we think about dermal and denticles teeth. So it's like their skin is covered with lots and lots and lots of tiny teeth that helps them move through the water very efficiently. And that's why if you've ever had the chance to feel a shark, it feels like sandpaper when you rub them in one direction, which is pretty cool. And actually their upper jaws are not fused to their heads. So it helps them be really efficient predators in that sense as well.
whoa, that's quite a lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
And then, do all sharks have teeth?
Excellent question. So people often think about teeth when they think about sharks. We've seen the jaws. And sharks are really important to scientists. They actually give us a lot of information about the shark. Looking at the shape of the tooth, we can learn a lot about that shark's diet. For example, if a tooth is long and thin, we know it uses it to spear and hold that fish in place. So it eats a lot of smaller fish. Or if it's wide and serrated, like the edge of a knife, they tend to eat larger prey items like a seal. Some sharks have both kinds of teeth depending on what their diet is. And all sharks have teeth, but not all sharks use their teeth, interestingly enough. Have you ever heard of the basking shark or the whale shark?
Yes.
Yeah, so those are some of the largest fish in the sea. They are indeed sharks, and they're what we call filter feeders. So like some whales are, they don't use their teeth for feeding. They are what we call vestigial structures. So they still have them, but they don't use them in the same way as many other animals or other sharks would use them for feeding. So they have them, and unlike us, our teeth, if we lose some teeth after a while, we'd have to go to the dentist. But sharks can actually regrow teeth throughout their whole life cycle. Some sharks can have up to 30,000 different teeth throughout their life, so constantly regrowing because they use them, and oftentimes they bite down with such force that they will fall out. That's how sometimes you find different sharks on the beach or other places that people then can learn from.
Mm-hmm. And then I have a few more questions, but one of them, it sounds like you have, but have you ever swam with a shark?
Yes, I love that question. So I've done swimming with sharks in different ways. I have gone snorkeling in San Diego, so Southern California, just over leopard sharks. They're pretty small, they're not harmful, so great way to observe animals in their natural habitat. Definitely we don't want to touch or try and engage with animals in the wild, just want to observe and appreciate them and what they do in their environment. I also got to go scuba diving with some black tip reef sharks in the Galapagos Island, which was really cool to see them from their eye level under the water. And then when I got to study great white sharks in South Africa, I got to go cage diving. So I got to see some of the sharks I'd been studying for months in the water. But animals like great white sharks, you wouldn't necessarily want to free swim with them. As they are predators, you want to always be respectful of them. But any chance you can see animals in the wild, I always recommend. Really cool opportunities to learn more about them.
Mm-hmm. And then this is one of the questions that I did not write down, but I've heard two things, and I think these might intertwine with each other. I've heard that sharks have like 7 senses, which is true because they have like electrosensing and like pressure sensing, right? So is it possible, because I think it is, I think some people have done it, is it possible to make a shark invisibility suit so you cannot be, I feel like it's been done before, like the shark can't sense you or they can't see you very well.
Yeah, I love that you're thinking about how we can create things, design solutions so that we can work with sharks in their environment, thinking about engineering design solutions. And we know sharks have been around for about 450 million years. They're very well adapted to their environment. So they're very good at sensing where their prey items might be. Just like I'm very good at knowing when someone's making a pizza in the kitchen when I get hungry. Sharks are very good at sensing their environment. They actually do a pretty good eyesight, but as you mentioned, they can pick up electrical impulses. They can sense fluttering, because often fluttering signals there might be a wounded or sick fish that will be an easier catch for them. So I know a lot of people are working on some really cool things, different kinds of suits, different kinds of shark repellents, so that people and sharks can coexist in the same space. And we don't have to worry about safety for either the sharks or the humans. So it's definitely a really cool area. There's so much work that we still can do and should do to think about, again, how we can both be in the same space. And people are really creative about how we can kind of hide other signals that sharks might pick up on in the environment, like scent or electrical impulses. They can sense like heartbeats, things like that, which is pretty cool and not something that humans have in the same way.
Mm-hmm. So actually, you answered one of my other questions. It was, are sharks prehistoric? Which you said they were like 450 million years old. So that is obviously somewhere around the dinosaur, before the dinosaurs, and we consider those prehistoric. So
yes, yeah, sharks have been around for a long time, as you just reiterated, about 450 million years. A lot of people ask me or think about the classic Megalodon as the prehistoric shark. Really, really cool animal. The largest animal that has ever been in the ocean. Definitely extinct today. There are no Megalodons around, but they were pretty cool. Lived about 20 million years. We think went extinct just about 3 million years ago. So definitely no overlap, but really, really cool animals and the kind of quintessential prehistoric shark image that a lot of us have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard about the Megalodon too. Like, I mean, if you look at a great white shark it's like tooth that's like this big.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at like a Megalodon tooth, it's like the size of your hand. It's
pretty
crazy.
massive. Yeah, now great white sharks, big ones are about 20 feet. And megalodons, we think, were about 60 feet. So definitely orders of magnitude larger. So we think about great white sharks are pretty impressive animals. Oftentimes, if you've ever had the chance to go to an aquarium or museum and see some of the models of the Megalodon jaws are just absolutely massive. You could stand up inside of the jaw and just see how large those teeth are. And they ate things like whales, so they were pretty large animals themselves. And we actually don't know 100% why some of those Megalodon went extinct. We think one of the reasons why is because there was more and more competition for their food source. Other scientists think maybe there is different changing environmental conditions. But we just want to keep collecting more clues from the environment, look at that fossil record to help give us more information and answer some of these questions.
Mm-hmm. And then, how many species of sharks are there?
Yeah, excellent question. And a little bit of a tricky one to answer because we don't know. We have identified about 500 different kinds. We think there's about 3,000 in that 450 million year span. There are certainly sharks that are extinct today, like Megalodon, as we just mentioned. But we're still discovering new species all the time. For example, I have a good scientist friend of mine that recently got to discover and name a new species of shark that they found off the coast of Central America called the ninja lanternshark, which is super cool. So that's really awesome that we're still finding all these really unique and new different species of sharks out there.
Mm-hmm. Actually, question about the ninja lanternshark. Why is it called that? Because I've heard of it.
Say that again?
I've heard of the lantern shark, and I know why it's called that because I actually forget why it glows, but there might be some bacteria in it or something like an anglerfish, or maybe there's like, I'm still not entirely sure. I don't remember, but.
Yeah, so the ninja lantern shark lives, I believe, in fairly deep waters. So it's pretty darkly colored. It looks black to our eyes, hence it looks like a ninja, very stealth predator. And that was actually a fun collaboration between the scientists. She actually got to bring in her two cousins to see if they had any ideas about what to name the common name. It does have an official scientific name as well, but a really great way to get students interested and engaged in the process. So she got to bring in her family and they got to name it based again on the appearance that it looked like the completely dark stealth predator, but it's pretty small, not a large species.
Yeah. And then, how long do sharks live? And obviously this is going to vary from different shark to shark, but is there like an approximate? Do they all live close to each other? Or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as you mentioned, it does depend on the species. They think an average is about 30 years, but they recently found the Greenland shark. That was, I think it was around 272 years old. They think it can live to 500 years old, which is certainly the longest lived vertebrate species, vertebrate meaning having a backbone. So again, we're just learning new things all the time. Other species live a lot shorter, like 10 to 15 years. White sharks, for example, can live 70 years, so very close to a human lifespan. Lots of different factors, but again, average about 30 years.
Mm-hmm. And then, so you're out in California now. How many species of sharks live near or close, or like live near on California?
Yeah, also great question. Hard for us to answer because, again, we are discovering new species all the time. And as migratory animals, a lot of sharks might only spend part of their life here, like the white shark. There are certain hotspots where they're found because their food source stays there a lot of the time, but they will move to other places. Sharks are a pretty hard animal to study in a lot of ways because they are fairly migratory and do spend a lot of their time in the open ocean. So unless you're able to have tags that you can attach often to the dorsal, we don't really know where they go, where they spend a lot of their lives. But I've read about 30-ish species off the coast of California. Here in Northern California, I consider us very lucky to live right around what we call the Red Triangle. The Farallon Islands right off the coast of San Francisco, where we have a population of seals. And so we have a lot of great white sharks that are here a lot of the year. So really cool. There are a lot of interactions sometimes with humans. Sometimes they've seen a juvenile white shark come into San Francisco Bay. So you do often get the curious shark, but most of the time they're just doing their thing. They're not interested in bothering us humans.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing because
they're very good at what they do. They're very well suited to their environment, much more than we are to living in the ocean.
And what made you want to study sharks?
Yeah, I love that question. I actually wanted to be a marine biologist since I was 11 years old. I actually got to go snorkeling and completely fell in love with the ocean and wanted to study it, but didn't really know what about the ocean. And then after college, I had an opportunity to travel to South Africa and study sharks. I didn't know much about sharks, and so I thought, what a great opportunity. I can learn more about something, and completely fell in love with white sharks as something that a lot of people have kind of a fear around, or definitely misunderstood animals. And now I have such an appreciation for how they can be so unique. They each have their own personality, and they're just, as I mentioned, so well adapted to their environment. And so now I consider it a little bit of a personal mission to help educate and talk to students about sharks and help them understand sharks are so important. They're not something to be afraid of. They're something to be respected. And we definitely want to learn more about them, but they're really, really important to keep in the ocean.
Mm-hmm. And then I noticed that there's a picture behind you. Are those all sharks, or?
These are not all sharks, but these are a few different sharks. A scientific illustrator created just some pictorial representations of sharks. And as a shark lover, I couldn't pass up the chance to have some sharks in my home. So always good. And then I have another shark friend right over here. So love to surround myself with sharks whenever I can, when I can't be in the ocean.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite type of shark?
Actually, I don't know a lot of them, but I don't know, maybe the lemon shark.
Ooh, very cool. Yeah, there's so many sharks out there. Completely understandable if you don't have a favorite. They're all pretty amazing, so that's also great.
Mm-hmm.
Any final questions?
No. Is there anything that you want to say about sharks, or?
Yeah, my biggest thing about sharks is just, again, hopefully that we can move away from this idea of sharks as scary, mean man-eaters, but sharks are really, really important. They help regulate and control the environment, and that they're very important predators. They'll often eat some of the weak fish or sick fish so that populations of their prey species can stay healthy and robust. And they help manage a lot of the other populations, called top-down regulation. So it's really important for us to try and think about how our actions impact things in the ocean, and particularly sharks. What can we do to help make sure that they have the best chance that they have at doing what they do, maintaining an ecosystem balance? And the best way to do that, just to learn more, talk to more people, share what you know with other people that might not know.
Are there any species of sharks that are endangered? Like, can you name them?
Yeah, unfortunately, there are a lot of shark species that are endangered. For example, the great white shark. It is really challenging for us to get good concrete data on just how many sharks there are. Oftentimes, they're just estimates. Again, it's really hard for us as land animals to fully understand things that live in the ocean. Some of the best data we have is by attaching some of these tags, kind of doing population surveys, and then estimating, scaling up from there. But a lot of sharks, unfortunately, are hunted for things like their teeth. Their fins are sold for shark fin soup. And oftentimes, there's people that just have this natural fear or frustration with sharks. And so some people hunt them for sport, or they think they're protecting themselves. So unfortunately, we have lost a lot of sharks. Estimates anywhere between about 23 and 100 million sharks every single year. So that's a huge loss to the environment. But thankfully, there are a lot of people doing really great work, a lot of great laws that are in place to try and limit buying, trading, or selling shark products. For example, if you decide to go to a country and do ecotourism, if you want to go diving with sharks or find, for example, like a shark tooth necklace, you just want to make sure that that organization is responsible and that they're not actively killing sharks for those items, or they're not trying to harass sharks for the sake of the guests, whether it's somebody on the boat or a diver. So it's always good to ask them questions and just try and get a sense about that company, make sure that they're treating the environment respectfully. Thank you so much. I love your curiosity. I love your questions. I love chatting with you, and it's always a pleasure to talk about sharks. If anybody else has questions about sharks or anything they'd love to learn about, definitely send us questions on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.